What are your thoughts on that? I've seen people on the right that are just kind of like, ha, you know, proves it's not racist. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I think, my first reaction from seeing the situation unfold on body cam is like, I just felt like the whole situation is much more tragic than a lot of people thought. Tragic in the sense of like, George Floyd was not acting in his right mind. He was clearly impaired. He was clearly. I don't think he was trying to hurt anybody. And even the cops, like I don't think they perceived him as, necessarily dangerous. But the condition that he was in, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they did confirm that he was on methamphetamine at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just really tragic that you had a man and you could see that like his heart was on display. He didn't want to hurt anybody. He didn't, but his faculties were just so impaired that he wasn't able to conduct himself irrationally. And at the same time, it's like, I think the police were for a long time trying to kind of de-escalate the situation and deal with an irrational actor. But that doesn't change, it doesn't change that he didn't need to die that day, So, I think on one side, people that are very invested to the emotional side of things like this, they're just going to see the emotion and it's going to be that much more terrible for them. Because you have this guy that's just pleading. He doesn't want to get shot. He doesn't want to die. So it's just very hard to see. But then, the other side of it is that, I think to me that, this wasn't a premeditated murder situation. These officers didn't go out at the beginning of the day looking to end somebody's life. And I don't think that they intended on that. Especially I think it was like one of the guys' first day on the job, but that doesn't minimize the end result of what actually happened. You can't. And the thing that's most disturbing to me still is the lack of awareness as George Floyd was dying. And then just the total callousness of not taking any time to try to resuscitate him. That's the thing that is the most troubling to me. I would get it if the police are in a shootout situation, bullets are flying, one of the guys they hit's bleeding out. All right, but the cop isn't going to get out from undercover to administer first aid on this guy. Sure. But that's not the case. They were in no threat. They had 4 guys on him. You know what I'm saying? So like, what were you waiting on? And that to me is, I think, the most damning thing on the whole side of the police. Because even the knee, like, I get it. Police put knees on people's back when they subdue them. That's pretty standard. And I could understand if somebody lost awareness and put their knee on the neck on accident, But like, I think the most inexcusable thing is just that they didn't try to resuscitate him or try to correct their error in any way.
Yeah, man. And I think it's going to be dependent on how people are looking at it. I think, to me, this doesn't really change a whole lot. It seemed like he was having a panic attack. If he was on drugs or not, I don't know to his state of mind. It seems like he freaked out and was having a panic attack. And instead of learning or knowing how to deal with that, they didn't know how to deal with him and then killed him. And so it doesn't excuse the fact that they killed him. I think it's going to be very difficult to get a murder 1 on this.
Yeah, they're not going for murder 1.
They're not going for murder 1.
They would never get it. And honestly, even after this, I don't know the legal precedent for it all, but I do wonder if any of this changes the likelihood that even murder 2 instead of murder 3, manslaughter, because murder 2 has to show that, like, all right, you didn't wake up that morning planning on killing somebody, but you knew you were killing somebody, and in the act you followed it through. So like I said, I'm not a lawyer and I don't know that, but
we're rappers, guys.
Definitely do see how it could weaken the case. Which
I'm gonna let you go, Mowgli. I know you got to get out of here.
Yeah, man. Hey, man. Love the talks. Thank you for having me on. About to hop on another call.
All right, peace. Yeah, guys, I think it's very unfortunate, man, that we are viewing this in a very polarizing way, where really this is like a man lost his life, whether he was high, whether he was having a panic attack, whether he had COVID at the time. Like, none of that makes a difference. That, listen, this man did not deserve to die. Resisting arrest is not punishable by death. It's not. It's not. And if you think this somehow justifies it, that, oh, gotcha, social justice warrior, look, you know, what kind of person are you to celebrate that the body cam footage is released and shows him high and freaking out and saying he's claustrophobic, and you're celebrating that? That's pretty dark. That's pretty dark. Like, you feel vindicated because, you know, the officer wasn't cussing at him before the, like, what were you thinking it was going to show? What were you hoping it wasn't gonna? I don't understand this. I think this is a breakdown to me of just incompetence as a human. I don't know what the police protocols are. I'm not a police officer, but the incompetence as a human to put your knee on a man who is handcuffed, subdued on the concrete, and to feel like the breath leave and to think it's okay. I think it's incompetence. I don't think it's murder one. I don't think he went out and tried to kill him. You know, unless they prove they had some kind of conflict or confrontation prior to the fact, which I don't know. That there might be some precedent at that. They worked at the same club before. I guess they may have gotten into verbal altercations before. I don't know. But goodness, man, the fact that there are people on both sides, but specifically from the right, that were like celebrating and like felt vindicated that this came out. I don't understand. I don't understand it. I thought that was very telling. If you were celebrating that this came out, and you think somehow the officer was right to remain holding all of his weight down on a man's neck, I don't get it. I don't get it. I just don't understand that. I don't understand that. Yeah, I don't. So anyway, I'll take some of you guys' questions, thoughts on why it took so long to release the body cam footage. A little frustrating given how big it became, and I agree, doesn't change a whole lot. I don't know why they didn't release the body cam footage, Ethan. That's a good question. I mean, I think that's a fair question. Maybe there's, I don't know, bureaucratic reasons, policy reasons. I don't know. I know sometimes it seems like they released body cam footage right away. You know, it's been, what, 2 months they released it, right? So I don't know if that's fast or short in the process of things. I don't really know if it would have changed anything, to be completely honest with you. I don't know if it would have changed anything. I think there still would have been protests. I think people would have still been upset. I think it still would have been, think it still would have been something everybody was upset about. Body cam footage was leaked on Reddit 2 days ago. Got it. One can't be resisting arrest when he's laying handcuffed on his stomach on the street for 8 minutes and 46 seconds as he's being murdered. 100%. 100%. You totally nailed that. I mean, listen, like, there's a difference between like fighting police and resisting or like having a panic attack, freaking out, you know, and saying, hey, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy. I think that's very, very different. You know what I'm saying? I think that's very, very different. It doesn't change a lot at all. Clear murder, even if not premeditated, but I don't think many thought it was premeditated to begin with. That's that. Yeah, for sure. Have you guys heard about this AK-47 dude who pulled out an AK-47 because somebody told him to put on a mask? That was crazy. That was crazy. I'll pull up the story real quick. Allegedly opened fire. Adam Zabrowski, 35, allegedly opened fire at a cigar shop clerk because he was asked to wear a mask, and he was also allegedly involved in a shootout with law enforcement. According to the report, the man has now been charged with 22 counts, which includes 7 counts of attempted homicide, even counts of first-degree murder of a police officer, 7 counts of aggravated assault, and 1 count of prohibited position. Zagorowski entered Cigars International in Bethlehem Township and got into an argument with the store clerk who requested him to wear a mask. The clerk reportedly offered curbside, but he became frustrated, showed him a paper with apparently statement from the state law which said he did not have to wear a mask. However, state mandate masks in most places. So apparently this guy flips out and gets into a shootout with an AK-47. Who runs around with AK-47s, right? This is wild. I'm trying to see if he ever got shot here. According to the Daily Mail, the police went to Zaborowski's home the next day to arrest him, but he fled in the truck, according to Express Times. They eventually found him, but Zaborowski allegedly jumped out of the car and began shooting at them with an AK-47 and a handgun. Even though an official statement about his motive has not been announced, they said it was, he was flipping out because of the pandemic. Twitter weighed in on the issue. Funny how they didn't need to murder a literal armed and dangerous shooter. But meanwhile, they burst into Breonna Taylor's house and just shot her down while she was asleep. Sheesh. My man's was out here having a shootout with an AK-47 and did not get shot, or did not get killed. I don't know if he got shot. I'm trying to figure out, did he actually get shot or not? I'm trying to figure out if he got shot or not, because I can't tell if he got shot. But regardless, this is crazy. This is crazy. He shot at a clerk, recovering from gunshot wounds to his legs and buttocks. So he got shot in the legs and the butt. Wow. Yeah. So he definitely got shot at. But he got, they shot him in the leg. So I don't know. I think there's something to say where you have these escalations of force against certain individuals. People in the black community would say it's because of race. And you have a guy with an AK-47 shooting at 7 different police officers and not getting killed, not getting murdered or killed. I mean, that would have been really would have been a justified kill. That to me is fascinating. I don't understand, but I'm more concerned about those of you guys that think like it's okay, or not okay, but like, this proves that the cops are doing their job, and like, how do you not see that footage and still think there's something wrong, So yeah, man. I missed some of COVID's data. I were discussing what was the info you were trying to find. Basically, Mowgli just put together charts that we couldn't find in regards to number of new cases and death rates. And basically, he put together a chart. You go to his Twitter, that cases went way up, deaths not so much, barely at all. The peaks was actually late May, early April, which begs the question, why the radical shutdown? Why the radical shutdown of the economy? What are we trying to do here? Because it seems like we got through the worst of the deaths, right? It seems like we got through the worst of the deaths. But for whatever reason, we're still shutting down the economy. And he brought up deaths of despair, which is deaths based on, economic downturn, suicide, people letting themselves go, so on and so forth, and how those deaths are actually going to go, those are going to be worse because of this whole pandemic. So, yeah, man, people are definitely going nuts. So he was laying prone and had his legs up. Military training? I don't know what you're talking about. 7-7. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. You can rewatch this video if you want to hear the specifics of Mowgli's little graph that he put together of all the current data. It's really interesting. I recommend you guys go back, check that out. Check it out on his YouTube page. His Twitter page. I had him kind of explain it. And so on and so forth. So, I don't know about the lasting health complications afterwards. You know what I'm saying? I don't know about that. The worst of the deaths isn't the same as true exposure. Yes. I think racism and the Floyd situation can be put to rest. Here's the thing. Again, it's all in how you define racism. if you define racism as an individual personally hating another individual based on their race, which is, I guess, the more classical definition of racism, then you can say, you could argue that, well, now, look, we proved that it's not that. Well, that's when people are talking about racism, we're talking about incompetent systems or people with power in incompetent institutions. Watch my video about police culture, reacting to the Nancy Prasna situation, Joe Rogan, Nancy Prasna, and she talks about police culture, right? When certain people are talking about racism, they're not just talking about, oh, I hate this person because of the color of their skin. No, we're talking about this person is more likely to be dealt with in a physical manner. This person is more likely to have force used on them. This person is more likely to have deadly force used on them. And so the George Floyd thing is just the overcosm of that. It's the overflow of that. You can't prove somebody's intent, but you can look at the macro numbers and say, hey, this demographic of people is more likely to have all these things happen, right? And people are like, well, there's only 9 black people killed by police. Yes, but you're not looking at all the other arrests that were unlawful. You're not looking at all the other interactions where people were pulled out of cars and constitutional rights were violated. And those situations, when you look at the data, tend to be more people who are black, people who are Hispanic. That's just what it is. So if you want to assume that that race has nothing to do with it, I think you're attempting to live in a utopian society that just ignores the disparities that already exist. Whether that's implicit bias or whether that's racial profiling, those disparities exist whether you want to acknowledge them or not. Racism is against minority groups. If you Google the definition of racism, it is a view of certain minority groups, right? So that's why some people say, well, you can't, black people can't be racist against white people. I wouldn't say that, but I would say the minority groups. Just Google the definition of racism, you're going to say minority group, right? So system of racism, where it's in institutions and power and prejudice, that's I guess the more modern definition or the more classical definition. I don't have a dog in the fight. It doesn't really matter to me which working definition you want to go off of. What we can't do is ignore the disparities that are happening on society on a macro level with regards to the net worth of the average white family in comparison to the net worth of the average black family. It's 10-1, right? To the number of people who are incarcerated that are black, which that number is actually going down, to the number of people that are incarcerated that is white, which that number is going up, right? But you can't ignore the disparities. So when we're talking about the George Floyd situation, it's you're looking at it as an isolated event, which even as an isolated event, it was still gross incompetence and completely dropping the ball. But people aren't looking at it as a case-by-case basis. We're looking at it in the context of, well, what about Breonna Taylor's killers? Why haven't they been brought to justice? Well, what about Ahmaud Arbery, who those people weren't charged until 72 days after the fact, after the video went viral, after there was protest, right? Those are things, so people aren't looking at these as isolated incidents. George Floyd just became the figurehead. Unfortunately, he became the mascot for this kind of stuff. And again, you wanna dismiss it as something that's isolated. That's your prerogative. I don't think that's gonna help you be more understanding and a empathetic human being to people who are different than you. I don't think that's going to help you love your neighbor better, to dismiss that race played no factor in it, which, I mean, come on, like the assessment of wealth, the assessment of certain advantages in our society, it is what it is. And I'm a free market capitalist entrepreneur. It's not about dismantling capitalism. It is about acknowledging that there are disparities and saying, hey, how can we create equal opportunity? Not equal outcome, right? Not equal outcome. I love basketball. Doesn't mean I'm supposed to get paid the same amount as LeBron James to play basketball, right? I'm not going to the NBA, but an equal opportunity. I had the same opportunity as LeBron James to go to the NBA. We can't say that for everybody from every part of the country. There's huge disparities with access to opportunity, right? And I think that is what we have to look on and say, listen, the George Floyd thing and what's happening in the middle of COVID is just making us pay attention. And that is just such a blatant imagery of it. You know what I'm saying? I think the race card has lost its power once we call everything racism. I don't call everything racism, everyday gains. You may be assuming that's the case, but I'm not saying that everything is racism. I'm saying it's a luxury to not ever view race as a factor in these things, right? It's a luxury. And by race, I'm specifically speaking to the social constructs that we've created in America. Because remember, like, race isn't, there's ethnicity and there's culture and there's the sin of partiality. That's always been a thing, right? Classism has always been a thing. But specifically, the idea of race as a social construct is a modern thing. That's fairly modern. White is brought up and is viewed as superior. Black is viewed as inferior. That is a modern construct rooted in slavery. That is not something that's been around for a long time. That is something that is modern. So our degree of classism, our degree of the sin of impartiality are all modern concepts. They're not, you didn't have black versus white 2,000 years ago, right? You had Jewish versus Samaritan, right? You had different disparities. You had different cultural issues. Here, specifically in America, these are the ways we have categorized people and separated them by classes. If you don't think that doesn't impact us today, if you don't think slavery, which happened 150 years ago, okay, not that long ago, doesn't impact us today, people are like, people have been free for 400 years. No, it was 150 years ago. Emancipation Proclamation, 150 years ago. That's not that long ago, right? If you're talking about black people living under apartheid, about not getting their civil rights until the late 60s, that's not that long ago, right? This isn't that long ago. And then you're talking about the disparities on how black versus white people were sentenced for committing the same crimes, which many people would argue still happens till this day. But that's not just about race anymore. Now we're coming back to classism. Now we're coming back to classism, meaning that white kid, black kid do the same crime. White kid is more likely to have wealth and pay for a better attorney. Black kid doesn't. White kid is going to get less of a harsh sentence than the black kid. This stuff still happens today, right? Now you can't be like, oh, that's because he's black and this kid's white. No, it's because this kid had money to get a lawyer. How did he have money to get a lawyer? Well, if we're looking at the macro statistics, white families tend to have 10 times the net worth of a black family. They're more likely to be able to afford a good lawyer, so that kid can get off with probation, while this kid could do the same crime and get a way harsher sentence. This is today. This is today. You know what I'm saying? 50 years, less than one generation. Yeah, like there are people that grew up without their civil rights. That's crazy. Think about that. There are people that grew up without their civil rights, right? They're people alive today, right? That grew up under Jim Crow. So I think we gotta tread very lightly to assume that the sins of yesterday don't impact our todays and tomorrows. And in that, how do we create better things? And so if you're frustrated by the protest and the rioting and you're like, well, what is this accomplishing? Look at 8 Can't Wait. Look at the 8 Can't Wait campaign. Very reasonable request. It's not about defunding the police and abolishing the police. Very reasonable request. And a lot of this stuff is being adopted willfully. Like police departments are saying, yeah, we're going to adopt 8 Can't Wait. We don't want the liabilities. We want our officers to be better at de-escalation. These are great things that are happening right now because of the George Floyd protest. And they will help protect your uncle who has bipolar and had that psychotic break. And whether he's white or black, he'll be less likely to have force used against him by a police officer that's maybe not trained well enough in de-escalation, right? That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. We should be happy that these things are changing. We should be happy. Agreed. Classism plays a role. Racism has made it difficult for blacks to build wealth. Even now, things like getting loans are more difficult for black families. I think you're right in the general level. I don't know specifically about like getting loans or whatever. I don't believe in debt. I don't know if you need debt to build wealth. I know you can't. A lot of people do use debt. I don't have any debt and I'm still able to build debt, but maybe debt. Maybe I'm an exception to the rule. So, but I think historically, you're totally right. Historically, it has been harder for black families to acquire real estate, to acquire business loans, so on and so forth. And I think we have to we have to acknowledge that. Like, why I don't, some of you guys are so some of you guys are so detached from anybody's struggle but your own that you can't extend an inkling of compassion, an iota of empathy. And that's unfortunate. And so it's not about me. Listen, I talk to people I disagree with on the regular. I probably speak to more people I disagree with than I agree with. It's about you becoming the type of human being that you want to be, which is hopefully a more loving, kind, patient, gentle person that could understand people, better.